Hi, this is Marcus Pulis and my friend Chad Lemoine, and this is Aquarian Anarchy. Before I get started, go ahead and hit that bell icon and, subscribe, like, go to our store, check out what we got, all that crazy stuff. Comment. Chad and I'd love to have an argument with you. But this week I want to get into some pretty serious stuff, so I'm going to dive right in. There's a couple things. If anybody actually watched to the end of the last uh, Aquarian Anarchy and found where we had talked about that we were going to talk about the future of Aquarian Anarchy, I do want to do that this week. But I don't know if you've noticed or not, since the last Aquarian Anarchy, country's on fire. So, so kind of want to talk about that, which is good because now, suddenly, COVID-19 is gone. They cured it. And apparently, police fucking over black people cures that shit. You'd think we'd be immune, but because of all the fuckeries they've done in the past. But apparently, it cured it right out, and no longer do we need to worry about the COVID, at least until they lose control again. So, so that's done. So before we get started, Chad, is there, because you're friends with the people in the Hotep Nation, Hotep Jesus, and all
Uncle
of them.
Uncle Hotep, yeah, Dodoobs and all those guys, yeah.
Is there any particular perspective that you might be able to share before we dive into the article that I've got?
Yeah, I mean, so
Main reason
there's
is because
a
we're a
big
couple
part
of
of
white guys,
yeah. Well,
you know.
so it's interesting because there's a long standing feud, I guess you could say, between Hotep Nation, the Hoteps as they call them. So to give people a little bit of a background of where this term comes from. It's an ancient Egyptian word that means like peace and satisfaction, and is kind of like a greeting, kind of like the namaste of ancient Egyptian culture, that sort of thing, where you are offering and wishing peace and satisfaction and joy, and fulfillment to other people. um, but what's funny about it is that it has become this, or it became, it's kind of transformed now again, into something a little. It's been repurposed by Hotep Nation, fortunately. So the way that what started to happen was it was a pejorative that was thrown around by a lot of people, mostly like socialists, leftists, that sort of the your standard, Democrat, side of the
Right.
political spectrum. And what they were doing is they were making fun of, like, what they call the old heads, the guys, the old man in the barber shop, or the old man that owns the store that will try to tell you about all the different things that, um, these very true things that people seem to fail to grasp, or don't want to have their scales lifted from their eyes to be
Right.
able to see, um, like, how the drugs got in the black community, how the guns got into the black community, and how, like, these sorts of things are not the sorts of things that are, like, grown and manufactured in the black community. Yet somehow, here we have all this shit, and there's a lot of history, um, of some very influential leaders that are not Martin Luther King. You go back to Marcus Garvey and, um, Kwame Ture, and Elijah Muhammad, and then into, Malcolm X, and that sort of more of a build the community rather than wait for, or appeal to politics. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because, as we talk about the future of this podcast, the future of Aquarian Anarchy, and as we look at how, kind of the way we started last episode, and the things that we discussed about the fuckery that goes on in the LP and just in politics in general. Um, there's a belief that goes across all cultures and everything. All skin colors. You know, you name it. That
Sure.
is, politics plays a role to a certain extent. Like, you can participate in that process to the extent that you don't completely ignore it, because if there's something that you can do that has like an immediate effect of, let's say there was something on the ballot where we could all go out and vote to release all the nonviolent criminals, I'd go out and vote for that, because that's something that immediately has a positive impact that I know would undo an injustice. Not voting for a politician who promises you these things, who's probably lying, Joe Biden, for instance, who helped, make a lot of this shit happen. So you have those kinds of things. But then, so what happened was, there were people, the hoteps, as they were called, as a pejorative, were people who spoke about proper nutrition, spoke about, a certain morality and cultural preservation, I guess, so to speak, to not just give up on old African culture and instead, embrace Westernism. And the discussions about how to properly build a community and how to not have other people who are the owners of things just kind of giving you the crumbs while you produce the thing that makes the, look at things like sports, for instance. You've got white owners, white media conglomerates, and then you have a bunch of black athletes going out there, and they're making money, but they're not owning the thing that makes the big money, that can revolutionize a culture and really, really transform things. So what would happen was, the to get back at them was like, go get some lotion, you ashy hotep. It's like basically making fun of these older folks who are trying to impart some wisdom on a younger generation, or even on an older generation who has just been blinded by the propaganda. And so what the group of folks that I'm friends with now, over the last few years, what they decided to do was just to say, okay, you're going to call us hoteps. We're going to claim that name back, and we're going to restore its original meaning. And now we are going to claim that, puff our chests out about it, and be proud of it. And we're going to build a nation around this idea of building, operating properly in the world, where we're not going and spending money on these things that destroy our community or that stand in the way of us building wealth. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice economics in our own home that help to promote us building wealth and being able to own things.
Awesome.
And we're going to empower ourselves through proper nutrition to stay healthy longer. And we're going to empower the people around us who can help out in the community to actually lead through the proper leadership and not look to one particular political party or another to save us from something. And so that's where this whole thing has kind of come from. So what's been interesting is, as this sort of thing has gone on, is there's been a real big clash between a lot of the black conservatives and Hotep Nation, especially around the Ahmaud Arbery killing, where you had people like Brandon Tatum, Candace Owens, Bryson Gray, some of these folks that were very quick to, throw the black guy under the bus to appeal to white conservatives who are never going to turn away an opportunity to post a video of a black guy saying it's okay that this guy died because he has, this criminal record, or he's got, whatever the case may be, make all kinds of excuses. Never even, one thing that was really interesting is there was a debate, and Hotep Jesus just asked a very simple question. He asked Bryson Gray, 60 seconds. I want you to defend Ahmaud Arbery. This is what he said. He said, if that's not him on the video, if that's not him on those pictures looking in that house, then he didn't deserve to be shot. And it's just like, so you're going to go out of your way to defend the white guys who killed him, and that's the best you can do to defend the guy who's dead? So there's a lot of like trying to, because by and large, like from a philosophical standpoint, there's a lot of I guess conservative, like from the standpoint of like self responsibility, personal responsibility, self-sustained, free market economics, that sort of conservatism, that's pretty prevalent in the Black community and especially in the Hotep movement. And so when you have these Black conservatives who are trying to go out and they're trying to appeal to people, and they just completely ignore the pain that people are in. They don't sound any different from the white conservatives, because that's who they're trying to appeal to. They're trying to get money from white conservatives to fund their YouTube channels, and stuff. Yeah. So
what it sounds like to me is that the Hotep Nation buys and gets. And to be clear, I've watched a couple of the Hotep stuff. I'm not too new to this myself, but to further what you're saying, my understanding is they have adopted a lot of the capitalist and that's the wrong word, but free market, economic stuff. They would tend to agree with people like Mises or maybe even Friedman when it comes to economics. But
very, very strong small L libertarian thread in there.
But they haven't lost their Blackness. They haven't lost that culture. They haven't lost that feeling of that this country ass rapes them on a daily basis.
Right.
And they're still upset about that and should be.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. Also, from what you talked about, something that I'm doing is, and we can see this in the events that are going around right now. One of the things I decided to do when I first started what would eventually be Aquarian Anarchy, this was a secondary channel, and there's a very long story of how voluntary visions didn't happen. Not going to get into it, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I personally prefer the title for myself of Voluntaryist. I think it's a more descriptive analogy or a better description of what I am and what I believe. Because anarchy, as much as I personally agree with it, is more of like an end goal. It's like, okay, we need to get to no state. And voluntarism is more about the how we get to that by turning things into a voluntary association. And then once things are voluntary, what we could perceive as government goes away. And for those that don't know, the word anarchy actually means no one above, or no rulers, nobody in charge.
Yeah, same way that a monarchy is, mono, one ruler, the archy being the above, the above part. And so, it's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a lot of, actually right now, what is actually a combination of the Black Lives Matter, and that's what I was getting to, is that the Hotep Nation has a long-standing feud with Black Lives Matter, because it's a movement that very early on was co-opted and has become something completely different from what it was originally supposed to be. And you have Antifa elements in there, and then you have Antifa coming in, and you've seen some of the stuff I'm sure of, where there are pallets of bricks being dropped off in different areas to support these riots. And what it is just, you have some agent provocateurs who are helping to foment. And then what do they call it? They call it anarchy.
Right. That's where I'm
quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite. Right. It is a propaganda campaign through this derisive action to try to stir up chaos. That is the chaos that we create when we are bombing countries all over the world. And actually, what I want to do, this is I don't know if you're familiar with Professor John Hosnes from Georgetown. He's a law professor at Georgetown. He says anarchy. It's like anarchy does not equal anarchy. It's basically like the two different forms of the word. He said, anarchy on the one hand, a society without a central political authority, versus anarchy, which is the way that the media portrays it, as chaos. He says anarchy refers to a society without a central political authority, but it is also used to refer to disorder or chaos. This constitutes a textbook example of Orwellian newspeak, in which assigning the same name to two different concepts effectively narrows the range of thought. For if lack of government is identified with the lack of order, no one will ask whether lack of government actually results in a lack of order. And this uninquisitive mental attitude is absolutely essential to the case for the state. For if people were to ever seriously question whether government is really productive of order, popular support for government would almost instantly collapse.
Absolutely. And and that's a good definition, and that's a good description. And for me, I decided when I wound up with, because I had already developed, a brand and developed symbols and stuff like that were Aquarian anarchy. And so I decided to embrace the word anarchy and be like, okay, well, I may prefer being called a voluntarist, but I am an anarchist. So, so I'm going to reclaim that.
Hashtag me too.
Right. and so, but you're absolutely right. And what he's talking about, linking that back to Antifa, is they have co-opted. Most people would call me an anarcho-capitalist. Mm-hmm. I think that's flawed, and I don't like particularly those words combined. But I believe in a free market, and if people follow some of the writings, particularly Milton Friedman, he actually strays away from the word capitalism for the purpose that, even though he does use it, but he makes clarifications that capitalism would be people who have capital. I'm poor as shit. I don't have much capital. So I cannot be a capitalist and invest in that way. I don't have enough capital to do it. But I do believe in the free market, and I think the free market is a better solution for the poor and the rich. But what Antifa has done is there is a branch and I've done a bit of studying of it as well, particularly Emma Goldman, of anarcho-communism.
Right.
Totally disagree with them personally with how they think that in a stateless society you could have a economic system that is collective. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's very difficult to do that voluntarily on anything larger than like a family, and even then, you've seen, even then, people can try to take advantage of each other, and at least some sort of like merit system where, hey, I don't trust you. You don't get to have the, you've got to, now that you've screwed me over a couple of times, you've got to prove yourself. You need to pay me first before I do the work this time, whereas just a collective, it's going to end up creating the need for some sort of enforcement. And lo and behold, every time it's been tried, that's what ends up being the instrument.
Right. And so, but pushing that aside,
right.
Even with the disagreement I have with them about economics, I think they legitimately, people that call themselves anarcho-communist, want to take down the government. Mm-hmm. So what they have done, because of the economic blurry lines with anarcho-communism, Antifa has managed to make themselves out to be these anarcho-communists. They are nothing of that. Right. Because they are not calling for the end of the state. An example is when Antifa was attacking Adam in New Orleans, he's trying to take power away from the state. They backed the cops against Adam. So,
Are you talking about that wasn't in New Orleans. That was in Boston, wasn't it?
no, it's in New Orleans. No, I'm talking about in New Orleans when the Antifa were coming around tearing down the signs that y'all put up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah.
And they were backing the cops.
Okay. I was thinking about the straight pride parade where he
Right.
he got it from both sides. But he was getting hugs from the straight pride parade people and hugs from the protesters of that who are not of the straight pride variety, and he was getting sprayed in the face by cops. So it's like the two people who were supposed to be fighting with each other are both hugging him, and the people who are supposed to be keeping the peace are spraying him in the face with mace.
Right.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about. This is where they were like cussing it out and posting shit on Reddit with the signs torn down, and they were like, "Look at this, whatever fascist nonsense." It was like the sign says, "What is freedom?"
Right. Right. Exactly. So, but they have managed to gloss over all of that and make them anarchists. Mm-hmm. And Trump put out a thing where he's saying, when government trots out the word anarchy, they're serious about destroying people's lives. Yeah. Because if they start using the word anarchy, they are going to hurt people. Mm-hmm. So I think this
and law and order in all caps was like at the end of that tweet too.
Right.
So it was very law and order is another one of those things. But it was interesting. So what you said about the anarcho-communists or anarcho-socialists is what I find. So you and I both will have arguments, disagreements, debates, whatever, with those folks. But it's generally around like philosophy.
Correct.
And like the end goal, right? And how realistic it is and how feasible it is. We're not calling each other cucks or murderers or fascists or Nazis or any of that kind of stuff. We're just discussing things, and we are having a lively but respectful debate about what a libertarian society looks like, what it can uphold, what it can actually support. And what I find interesting about that is that what you end up with when you see somebody like Antifa is you end up with the worst version of the doublespeak terms. You end up with the chaos anarchy, and you end up with the Stalin communism.
Right.
The Mussolini fascism. They're Antifa, and I made this joke like a year ago or more that they should just change their name to FA. Because they're not anti-fascist, they're fascists.
Right, exactly.
So
on the fascist note,
that's
probably a good place to start into this article that I found. The title of it is, "This is not a revolution. It is a blueprint for locking down the nation." This is by Dr. W. Whitehead of the Rutherford Institute. I looked him up. He actually founded it, and the Rutherford Institute is like a private organization that works at civil liberties, is primarily what they do. So he starts his article with a quote. The quote is, "When it gets down to having to use violence, then you are playing the system's game. The establishment will irritate you, pull your beard, flick your face to make you fight, because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you." That was by John Lennon. So as all of us have seen, just going off of this John Lennon quote, that's exactly what they're doing. The bricks that you were talking about, the multiple times, several people have pointed out that it tends to be the people that are breaking stuff right out of the gate were white
people.
Right.
It's like, looking out. And then there's this guy, and this is one of the things with the Black Lives Matter thing, is that like one of the co-ops that is the LGBTQ. There's like so little in the Black Lives Matter platform or whatever you want to call it about actual like black men.
Yeah.
and black fathers and like that sort of. And so when you think about, and then there's like this huge attack on black men, and there was a Root article a while back. They said straight black men are the white people of black people. You know, and it's like so if you're a straight male, you're like the devil apparently. Right. And so there's this guy at one of these rallies. There's a white guy holding up a black Trans Lives Matter sign, and it's like, that doesn't have a fucking thing to do with it. You're white, first of all. You know? Right. Second of all, you confused? That doesn't have anything. Like, I get that there are people who like have people assault them unnecessarily, you know, for things that are. You're not violating anybody's rights or anything like that, so you shouldn't be assaulted. You shouldn't be. It's not a self-defense thing or anything like that. So I get that's evil, yes, but stop trying to lump everything into like we're the same as black people because we have a struggle. Like, okay, yeah, everybody has struggles, but they're not all the same, and they don't all deserve to be lumped in with something. A man had his neck knelt on until he suffocated to death. That has nothing to do with anything else but that. And what you have is all of these different groups will try to come in, and that's where you have, and they'll have like another thing. I saw one where there's a big sign at a protest, and there's a NAMBLA logo at the bottom, and it's like, okay, the North American Man Boy Love Association or whatever. Like, no, hell no, we're not doing pedophilia. That's not like this is this. How did you get here, and why do you think that belongs as like one of the motives for this stuff? So yeah, but what it is you'll find passion, and then you'll have artificial passion brought in from the outside. And they're like, one of the things I think the Minnesota governor was saying is that most of the arrests that they made in this whole uproar this past weekend, or going up into the weekend, I think by Saturday morning was when he announced that like most of these people are not from Minneapolis. They're not even from Minnesota. So you have people coming in from out of state, breaking shit, vandalizing things, burning things. Right. Some of them are cops even. There's evidence to suggest that a lot of them are cops. There's the things with the little white armbands and the little earpieces and all this other kind of stuff. It's just very, a white dude in like a tight shirt with his hat on backwards, and he looks like he's military trained, and like all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, so you're just like really, really upset about George Floyd, huh? All right.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're feeling, and the sad part about it is there are people really, really in pain. Yeah. There are people who are really, really upset, who are sad about what has happened and what has continued to happen. And their voices are being drowned out by this cacophony of artificial bullshit.
On purpose.
On purpose. Because what they want is they want all the white people in Trump land to hate these people who are protesting and to lump them in with them so that they cannot connect. When what we should be doing is we should all be connected and fighting against those motherfuckers. Yep. Because the state is the problem. The state is the problem. It's murdering people. It's harming people. And what's really crazy about this, I'm not a big fan of like all the looting and all that kind of stuff, but on a certain level, I get it, because the same people who will complain about this as being barbaric and chaotic and savage and all this kind of stuff, don't give a fuck about if we loot and pillage Iraq or Afghanistan or Yemen or Syria or any of this other shit. They'll fucking watch the shit on TV like cheerleaders.
Yep. And they're doing the same thing to the black community.
We're just going over there to get their opium and their gold and oil.
For sure.
it's so different. Instead of a Louis Vuitton bag or or some Nikes, they're going over there for some oil or a poppy field.
Right, right. Or some gold.
Yeah.
So he continues. He says, brace yourself. There is something being concocted in the dens of power, far beyond the public eye, and it doesn't bode well for the future of this country. Anytime you have an entire nation so mesmerized by the political theater and public spectacle that they are oblivious to all else, you better beware. Anytime you have a government that operates in the shadows, speaks in a language of force, and rules by fiat, you better beware. And anytime you have a government so far removed from its people as to ensure that they are never seen, heard, or heeded by those elected to represent them, you better beware. What is unfolding before us is not a revolution. The looting, the burning, the rioting, the violence, this is an anti-revolution. The protesters are playing right into the government's hands because the powers that be want this. They want an excuse to lock down the nation and throw the switch to all-out martial law. They want a reason to make the police state stronger. It's happening faster than we can keep up. So we'll just start there. One, I'm a voluntarist. I'm an anarchist. I don't believe this guy is not. He would probably be a minarchist. But
which is fine. I think we're arguing about how we dance across the finish line at that point to me.
Correct.
We get to where he is. I'm like, all right, I'll plea bargain to minarchists if we have to. If I can get that right now, I'll plea bargain to minarchists right now.
Right. Yeah, amen. I'm with you. And but the only point that I would say is that all governments are like that, as opposed to when you have these governments.
Right.
So he continues. The Justice Department is deploying federal prison riot teams to various cities. More than half of the nation's governors are calling on the National Guard to quell civil unrest. Growing numbers of cities, having just barely emerged from the coronavirus lockdown, are once again being locked down.
Those things weren't related to this coming on the heels of everybody being locked up for 2 months in their house on house arrest. People are stir crazy already. There's been one that beat the fuck out of somebody for probably 2 months because they can't stand their mother-in-law or their, well, I shouldn't say that. See, that sounds like I'm projecting because my mother-in-law moved in with us, but that's not what I'm saying. I love you, Lala. It's no big deal. I'm not saying I want to hurt you. No, but for real, there's people who they've been damn near suicidal or whatever, or homicidal because of this lockdown shit. And now flip that switch and you've already got the pressure. It's either pneumatic or hydraulic pressure. The pressure has been building, and then they knelt on George Floyd's neck and they created a little relief valve. Yep. And they directed that relief valve right in this direction.
Yeah. So he says, this time in response to a growing upheaval, this is how it begins. It's that dystopian 2030 Pentagon training video all over again. I don't know what he's referring to there. I'm guessing people that follow him regularly would understand. But he continues, which anticipates the need for the government to institute martial law, use armed forces to dissolve domestic, political, and social problems in order to navigate a world bedeviled by, quote, criminal networks, or, quote, standard infrastructure, or, quote, religious and ethnic tensions, or impoverishment slums, or open landfills, overburdened sewers, a growing mass of unemployment, and an urban landscape in which the prosperous economic elite must be protected from the impoverishments of the have-nots. They are dividing us into the haves and the have-nots. And it just so happens that in this country, a large majority of colored people, whether they are black or Mexican or whatever that minority is, are impoverished. And they are the victims of the powerful white elites. Whether or not, I'm a white guy. I'm a poor white guy. I feel that I don't have no white privilege. I'm hoping to get it someday, but I don't have it. But the fact that I'm not privileged does not mean that the people that are in the higher echelons of whiteness are not.
Yeah, and we're talking about a different level too. This isn't your you know, I work and I make high five figures, mid five figures, or even like six figures income kind of elite. We're talking about um, the kind of the George Soros, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, the people who rule the world level people, the people who go to Bilderberg, those people. So I Googled this thing. So there's a Pentagon dystopian future, a video that warns of an unavoidable dystopian future. This was in October of 2016. Like, of course, right before, again, it's in an election year. So let's not forget that too, because the one of the outcomes that is expected from this is that your expectation is that you are going to go out and you're going to vote harder than you've ever voted before for this, for one side or the other. And it's to create this divide to where if there was a chance of having some other option, like dissolving the federal government or pushing the off switch on this whole thing, like, oh my God, no, you can't have that, because you got to have the law and order side who says, no, we've got to have more law and order.
Yeah.
And then you've got on the other side, it's
people choking people to death next to a car.
Right.
If we don't have government.
Right. And then on the other side, it's like, no, we need justice. And so then that side is using justice as their, whether it's social justice or in this case, like a criminal, justice, where they didn't arrest this cop for 4 or 5 days, which is fucking horseshit, because they knew who it was. The damn guy was on video that day. Right. Like, goddamn, you know who the fuck it is. This isn't like, because that's one of the things that gets that is one of the wedge issues in this black conservatives versus hoteps sort of debate. And it's not even really, it's some black conservatives, and then you have like more conscious black conservatives and and hotep nation that is, there's this divide where it's like, hey, what the fuck? Like, you can't tell me that, oh, what about black on black crime every time one of these things happens? Because it doesn't, because if somebody does a drive-by and shoots somebody, they're like tracking that guy down and they're finding him and they're making an arrest, or they've got a suspect list out, or somebody knocks over a liquor store or a 7-Eleven or something like that. They're finding out who these people are, and they're trying to get them in jail, because it's another reason to get somebody in jail. But when this sort of thing happens and it's law enforcement, we know who did it.
They don't do nothing.
They don't do anything until there's like shit burning, and then they're like, I guess we'll go to Orlando and find this guy, because there were people outside his house, so they fled to like Orlando. At least that's what I heard, that they had fled to Florida. But I don't know. I haven't. There's been a lot of stuff going on with being busy unpacking and everything with the move and all that stuff. But what's really upsetting about watching all this stuff unfold is how quickly people just, it's like ruts. You're buried in a rut. You're trying to get your car out.
Yeah.
And somebody wedges a 2x4. We're like, we're trying, we're pushing, and they get out. And right when you think they're getting out and they're going to get some traction and they're going to be going in the right direction, they slip back into the rut. And next thing you know, the tires are spinning and they're sinking even deeper than they were before.
All the time.
And that's what this does. These sorts of events are that reset that just put everybody back in their comfort zones.
Right.
And they stop thinking and they become like trained animals, where it's like, black people bad, black people burning things. It's like, actually, have you looked at the videos? Because it's like 70% white people dressed in all black, like they're going in there to contribute to havoc for the purposes of maybe strengthening the state.
Exactly.
It's like this weird thing where like you create anarchy to create more archy.
Right, and the thing is, people just miss the whole divide and conquer. Like from the left, you're hearing, oh, the violent people are in which
White
probably
supremacists. Yeah.
white supremacists. And the thing is, that may be true, but it's a convenient way to get people pushed to the sides.
Right, right. So you got Antifa being called out for it on one side, and white supremacists being called out on from the other side, and the people who are actually funding all this shit are just like, you know what? I don't give a fuck who you blame it on, just as long as you don't know where it really is coming from.
Right. As long as you stop blaming the cops, stop blaming them pigs that actually started it, we're good.
Right.
So he continues. He says, we're way ahead of schedule. The architects of the police state have us exactly where they want us, under their stamping boot, gasping for breath, desperate for freedom, grappling for some semblance of a future that does not resemble the totalitarian prison being erected around us.
Mm.
This way lies certain tyranny. You know, I think that one of the things that has definitely come out of this is that image of a police officer putting his weight on the neck of an American citizen is so symbolic.
The helplessness of that man with his arms handcuffed behind his back.
Right.
It's just being knelt on.
Yep. For one fleeting moment, quote, we the people seemed united in our outrage over this latest killing of an unarmed man by a cop hyped up on his own authority and power of his uniform. That unity did not last. That's absolutely true. The first thing that they started doing is trying to figure out a way, and they used race to divide and conquer. This is about black people.
What is Charlie Kirk, who's like Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum's best friend? You know, what does he do? He comes out with a tweet today or yesterday or something like that. Cops aren't racist. I'm like, well,
okay. Then how come there's more black people in prison? How come I don't have the statistics in front of me, but how come I live in a relatively urban-ish environment. We're right outside of urban areas, but I have a very good, or he's actually a friend, he's family. My brother-in-law is a black guy, and he's constantly being harassed. I can walk straight through my community and have not a bit of problems. But it might have something to do with that he's about a 6'3" black man with arms this big. Mm-hmm. I'm betting it makes them white people just a little bit nervous.
A little more polite.
Right. but
armed society is a polite society, right?
Right. Yeah, and so he gets constantly fucked with for walking while black. Right. So bullshit. That is absolutely true that these people are going after black people because they're black.
Yep.
So he says, indeed, it didn't take long, no surprise there, for us to quickly become divided again, polarized by the misguided fury and senseless violence of mobs taking to the street, reeking of madness and mayhem. Deliberately or not, the rioters have directed our attention away from the government's crimes and onto their own. This is a distraction. Absolutely. They certainly used the riots. You don't hear about the protests. You hear about the riots.
Oh, so funny story. My wife has a friend who, yesterday, so our sons go to school together, and her son told her that somebody, one of their friends or something like that, was going to the riots. She was going to a protest. Right. Somebody across the street from them. It's a family, like she's white and her husband's black. They have like 7 or 8 kids or something like that. And they were going out to the protest or whatever. But he said they're going to the riot.
Right. Yeah.
And so when she told my wife about it, she's like, oh yeah, there's a riot on Segan Lane today. And my wife's like, what, really? And she was like, what was it? And she's like, oh, I don't know. But she's like, well, was there violence? She's like, well, I don't think so. It's like, so like what and come to find it's just a protest. She's like, so a protest, not a and then we see the video of it, and it's like it's people saying, no justice, no peace, and shit like that, chanting. And there's another argument to be made for like how productive some of that stuff actually is. Like, I personally think, like, if you want to go like out to the precinct or something like that, and like make it really uncomfortable, like block entrances and shit like that, and like really really fuck with the cops,
Right.
or go to the Capitol and make it really, fuck with their ability to maneuver and get to their jobs and all that kind of stuff, to do their fuckery. That's one thing. But just, marching down the street, it's just like to me, it's very similar to voting. It's a way to feel like you're doing something. And that's where, back to the question you asked me originally about Hotep Nation. And so, like, what Hotep Nation is about building your community, owning your community, and being in a position to where when shit happens in your community, you have it handled. And so there's some places you go to, like different rural areas, and there have been places like this in the U.S. in the past, on a larger scale, even in some major cities, and that's some of the few cases where like the government has like bombed its own citizens. In Philadelphia they did this, and they you had Black Wall Street, you had the Waco compound, and for all the stuff that you might want to say about Koresh and the Davidians and Waco and all that kind of stuff, you could definitely not argue that the ATF and the feds did not blow their fucking asses out of the sky on American soil.
Right.
That they did not. They absolutely blew up their own citizens on purpose.
Right. Because they have a religious belief and weapons.
Yeah, because they had weapons, and that's the thing. Like, there was so much propaganda back then when all that stuff. Because I was in high school and college, I think, when that stuff was going down. Memory's kind of foggy. It's been a long time, but I remember there was like a little docudrama that came out back when they used to do that stuff, when people weren't binging Netflix, and all that kind of stuff. They would do these like 3 Sundays in a row, 3 hours per Sunday, 9-hour miniseries and shit like that. And they did this whole thing, and they basically, made the Davidian, and I don't know, maybe they were crazy, I don't know, but everything that I've read and seen since then, since the docudramas made them look like a bunch of lunatics who deserve to die, everything since then has made it look like, they might not have necessarily been like the kind of people I'd like to hang around with, but I'm pretty sure they didn't deserve to all be blown to smithereens.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the different. And so the same kind of thing happens with like George Floyd. It's like, oh well, they counterfeit money and blah 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 and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, well,
gotta demonize him.
The term is Hotep's been told you, and my term that I coined last week was Murray Rothbard been told you, because what did he say about it? Let's see, where's the thing? I think you saw this. It says, we may test the hypothesis that the state is largely interested in protecting itself rather than its subjects by asking, which category of crimes does the state pursue and punish most intensely? Those against private citizens or those against itself? The gravest crimes in the state's lexicon are almost invariably not invasions of private person or property, but dangers to its own contentment. For example, treason, desertion of a soldier to the enemy, failure to register for the draft, subversion and subversive conspiracy, assassination of rulers, and such economic crimes against the state as counterfeiting its money or evasion of its income tax. So what do we have here? We have a state agent kneeling on someone's neck to the point that they die.
Yep.
Allegedly over counterfeiting. Okay.
Victimless crime.
Right. The victim is the state. The victim is like, hey,
Yeah.
only we can do that. Only we can make money out of it. There, you can't do that. You can't just get a copy machine. We have our own copy machine, and you have to buy your money from us. Um, so anyway, it says, or compare the degree of zeal devoted to pursuing the man who assaults a policeman with the attention that the state pays to the assault of an ordinary citizen. Yet curiously, the state's openly assigned priority to its own defense against the public strikes few people as inconsistent with its presumed raison d'etre. So that the idea that we can expect justice when the state murders one of its own citizens is preposterous on its face, because it's not going to happen. We saw it with Botham Jean and Amber Geiger. You know, this cop breaks into his apartment and murder. This isn't like, so Breonna Taylor, it's a no-knock raid on the wrong apartment. They shoot her 8 times, kill her. Her boyfriend or husband or whatever shoots it back at them. They arrest him for attempted murder. Nothing for the fucking cops that killed her.
Of course not.
Then they start trying to dig through her past to see what kind of history she might have. What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Right.
Like, who cares? Anyway, so that's one thing. The Amber Geiger Botham Jean thing was like, it's not even a no-knock raid. She's drunk and goes to the wrong apartment.
Yeah.
And his apartment was open.
Right. And just makes her jump at home.
She just figured it's her apartment, sees a black man in there, he's sitting on the couch eating ice cream, and she's like,
right. Which is bullshit.
And what does she get?
That's the story she came up with.
She gets 10 years. If he had killed her
for
breaking into her apartment.
Yeah, they'd have thrown the book at him.
They'd have thrown the book at him. They'd have found everything that they could have. They'd have come search his apartment. If they had found any drugs, they'd have drug up like his past and all this kind of stuff. So it's very, it tells you all you need to know about this. And so that's why, like, for all of this, and I get it, like, pain is real and it hurts. You want to lash out, and you want someone to answer the call for justice.
Yep. And the state isn't that guy.
The problem is you're asking the wrong people.
Correct.
When you're asking the state for justice, you're asking the least just entity on the planet for justice.
For sure. So to get back to the article, you're absolutely right. There's no adding to that, Chad. You're absolutely right. They are nothing more than a criminal gang writ large.
Yep.
Rothbard was completely right. Yep. So to get back to the article, he says, this is a distraction. Don't allow yourself to be distracted. Let's not lose sight of what started all of this in the first place. The United States government. More than terrorism, more than domestic extremism, more than gun violence and organized crime, the systematic violence being perpetrated by agents of the government constitutes a greater menace to the life, liberty, and property of its citizens than any of the so-called dangers from the government claims to protect us from. Case in point, George Floyd died at the hands of the American police state. The callous, we've already covered all that, it's the same topic. The callous, cold-blooded murder of an unarmed 46-year-old black man by police is nothing new. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, police knelt on Floyd's neck while the man pleaded for his life, struggled to breathe, cried out for his dead mother, and finally passed out and died. Floyd is yet another victim of a broken system of policing that has placed, quote, we the people, at the mercy of militarized cops who have almost absolute discretion to decide who is a threat, what constitutes resistance, and how harshly they can deal with the citizens they are appointed to, quote, serve and protect. So, I think that everything he said there is absolutely what we're dealing with.
Piece. No, that's a beautiful piece. Is that it, or is there more?
No, it goes on.
It goes on. Damn.
Yeah.
No, it's a work of art so far. Like,
right.
It's good shit, man.
Yeah, that's why when I read this, I was like, oh yeah, using this tonight.
Hell yeah, man.
Daily, Americans are being shot, stripped, searched, choked, beaten, and tasered by police for little more than daring to frown, smile, question, challenge an order, or just exist. I mean, I've seen this myself. I was pulled over in Indianapolis for driving the speed limit.
Right,
said,
I remember that. You weren't going fast enough.
Yeah,
you weren't going fast enough.
I was going the speed limit, and they had no answer to how fast should I go? Because you can pull me over if I speed.
But they'll pull you over if you go too slow or if you speed. It's like...
Right. So, anyway, he continues. He says, I'm talking about the growing numbers of unarmed people who are being shot and killed for just standing a certain way or moving a certain way or holding something, anything that police could misinterpret to be a gun or igniting some trigger-centric fear in a police officer's mind that has nothing to do with the actual threat to their safety. Killed by police, and he has a list. Killed by police for standing in a shooting trance. Killed for holding a cell phone. Killed for holding a baseball bat. Killed for opening the front door. Killed for being a child in a car pursued by the police. Killed for approaching police while holding a metal spoon. Killed for running all of these are examples. Killed for running in an aggressive manner while holding a tree branch. Killed for crawling around naked. Killed for hunching over a defensive posture. Killed because a police officer accidentally fired his gun instead of his taser. Killed for wearing dark pants and a black basketball jersey. Killed for reaching for his license and registration during a traffic stop. Killed for driving while deaf. Killed for being homeless. Killed for brandishing a shoe horn. Killed for peeing outdoors. Killed for having his car break down on the road. Killed for holding a garden hose. The list goes on and on and on. Now, you can make all kinds of excuses to justify these shootings. And in fact, that's exactly what you'll hear from the politicians, police unions, law enforcement officials, and individuals who are more than happy to march lockstep with the police. However, as these incidents make clear, the only true compliant, submissive, and obedient citizen in a police state is a dead one. So, because in many of the cases that he lists above, they were complying. They were doing what they were told to do. A perfect example is George Floyd.
Yeah. Did you ever see that video of that kid that got murdered in the hallway of that apartment complex a few years back? White kid. He's like down. So. He's down on his knees. He's covering his, and they're telling him like multiple different things to do. They're like, "Don't move. Put your hands on your head." It's like, which one is it? Don't move or put my hands on my head. Right. And it's, like shit like that. And they just like
all that.
He like, I don't remember what he did. But he's like, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what you want. And he's like got his hands up like this, and he's doing like this. And I don't remember where. It's been a long. I could only watch it once. Yeah. It's horrible. Because they just unloaded on him. But it's that sort of thing where like it doesn't matter if you are the thing that came to my mind while you were reading through that list is when they think the whole world is their home.
Yeah.
You are always invading.
Yeah.
They own everything. You're an invader, and so all you have to do is look threatening, and they'll kill you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
so like you can be on the side of the road, broken down. That's their road. That's their home. That's the mentality. The mentality is, and I don't know. Like I've heard different, there's mixed reviews about like how all this stuff, kind of works itself out.
Mhm.
But like in London, I think, or maybe it's all of the UK. I'm not sure. It may just be like Great Britain or just maybe just London itself. But like cops don't have guns; they just have like their little billy club, and they're basically like glorified like mall cops,
Yeah.
where their whole purpose is like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need help? You want me to call somebody? And it's not. It automatically starts off every interaction where it's not a military SWAT team like invasion type.
Yeah, they don't have their hand on their gun as they walk up.
I don't know if you saw, but like when Ahmaud Arbery, when that case kept unfolding, they started dragging up these old videos of him getting pulled over on the side of the road or other interactions with the cops. They
Mhm.
start releasing all these videos. And one of those videos was he's in his car on the side of the road, may or may not have been smoking. I don't know. They said they smelled something when they went, as the whole interaction went on. But like the whole thing starts off with a cop pulls up behind him while he's just sitting on the side of the road at a park, like just parked off to the side of the road. Not on the road. He's like a good 8 feet off the road into the grass. Okay. And he's in there and he's playing a track. Now I've done stuff like this before. Like either like recorded a voice message or recorded a little video message or something like that.
You're not supposed to do any of that while driving. Remember
While you're
that.
driving, right? So he had pulled off to the side. I think he had a track playing, and he was rapping. Like it was like he was trying to like kind of hone that craft, so to speak, and be that was like one of his ambitions. And so he was okay. Um, he was sitting there listening to a track and just kind of like trying to perfect his flow. And this cop comes up, and immediately it's that first of all they're all donned like they're going to like kick down doors and blow people away, with holsters, with guns and all kinds of.
Going on.
It's a very militaristic setup and posture that they approach every interaction with. It's definitely not good cop that you meet. I've had one time where I got pulled over. It was like a 35-mile-an-hour zone or something like that. I was going like 41 or something, and I think my inspection sticker was expired. Anyway, because my inspection sticker is expired, and I was going 6 miles an hour over the speed limit, and it's one of those things where like the speed limit dropped really fast.
Mhm.
Well, I pull over, and the first thing the cop says is, "Put your hands outside the car." I'm like, jazz hands. No, but so I was like, what the fuck? Like, really?
Right.
Like, you really think that like I'm like a real threat that you need to like be
Right.
terrified of me, that I'm gonna try to shoot you or
Yeah,
something
show you my hands.
because I was going 41 and a 35, and I don't have an inspection sticker,
Right.
or I have one, but it's like I think it was expired. Anyway, point is, and I'm white, and like I'm sure like my story sounds like, yeah, what the fuck ever, white dude, you have no idea, like it's like it's way you got the
You got
light
the nice
treatment.
cop.
You got the light treatment. That was actually a black cop that did that, but anyway, yeah, it was crazy, and it makes me think of how like all these interactions, they start off in this way that's like way over the top, like it's threat level midnight, to pull from the office. um you're already at DEFCON 5 before
Right.
the shit even starts,
Yeah.
and so everybody's on edge. And so then when they're on edge, and they're the ones with the guns and the authority and the ability to throw you in a cage and everything, if you really think about it, the preponderance of danger is always the non-cop.
Correct.
The cop has no idea how much more threatening he is to everyone else than anyone.
He has every bit of idea. He has every bit of idea. He's doing that on purpose.
Yeah, he has an idea. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Touche. You are correct.
You will respect my authority.
Right. But I guess what I meant was like people just kind of assume that the cop is like, well, yeah, you don't know how hard it is. You know, they're always, you know, they're risking their lives to keep us safe. Like, no, motherfucker. First of all, the Supreme Court ruled they don't even have to keep you safe.
Right.
Their number one priority is keeping themselves safe. And if you're getting fucked over, they can just be like, just like the shit that happened in Florida or whatever with the school shootings and shit.
Yeah, they rule. They rule two things the police officer for. Two, protect and serve, nowhere near there. They do not have to do that. They have two things, and this is the most important one. Raise revenue. Yep. That's the most important one. The second one is enforce laws. That's it. That's all they do.
Yep. Regardless of what those laws are.
Correct.
What's interesting too is that like it's one thing to paint this, especially for conservatives, because conservatives are more in the line of like defending the cops or defending the McMichaels who killed Ahmaud Arbery. That's more of a conservative thing than a liberal thing. Now, what the left will do is they will try to create that division by making shit seem different from how it is and overblowing something or something like that, where it's they said the thing about, you know, he was just jogging through the neighborhood. Well, no, I mean, clearly, like, so he's in like khaki shorts and he's in like boots or something. He wasn't just going out for a jog. And yeah, he had been snooping around that house, you know? So let's not, but what they do is that's done intentionally. It's done intentionally because then it gives this short circuit to the brain, to the conservatives, to say, you said he's just a jogger. It's like, I didn't.
Yeah.
I just said, I don't give a fuck what he did. If he didn't try to kill somebody, he doesn't deserve to die.
No death penalty for robbery. Sorry.
Now, so if he was breaking into their house while they're in there,
right,
that's different. Because I don't know if he's just coming to take a hammer or if he's coming to rape my daughter. You know, like, I don't know what he's there for. So I'm going to smoke you if you try to come through my door. You know, that's a completely different thing.
But he's not in the door. He's way down the damn road.
Exactly. That's the thing. Is once he's gone and he's going the other direction, like, you can't meet his lack of force with like overwhelming force just because you feel like you're in the right. So what I was going to say is, it's always interesting to me to paint it. So like, okay, well, what if the McMichaels were black and he was white? How would, you know, that? Okay, that's the really easy way. What's really a trick question for the conservatives is, especially the white conservatives, is let's just say a bunch of black guys took half your money every year, okay, and threatened to shoot you and throw you in some, I don't know, basement in the hood or something like that, you know, and also they came and they were like looking in your windows and they were, you know, checking out who you were calling and who you were texting and what your messages were and all this kind of stuff, you know, and they were tapping your security cameras to see what your wife was wearing and all that kind of stuff. How would you respond to that? Because my guess is you wouldn't say, who's going to build the roads?
Right, exactly.
Because who's going to build the roads is always the response when it's a bunch of white people who are stealing half your money and who are doing all that.
Correct. Shit. You're absolutely right. To get to back to this, he says, sad, isn't it? How quickly we have gone from a nation of laws where the least among us had just as much right to be treated with dignity and respect as the next person, in principle at least, to a nation of law enforcers, revenue collectors with weapons, who treat us all like suspects and criminals.
Yeah.
This is not how you keep the peace. This is not justice. This is not even law and order. This is certainly not freedom. This is the illusion of freedom.
It's the
Unfortunately,
illusion of law and order too, and all those other things. It's
yep,
every one of those things. It's meant to do the opposite. It's the
correct.
opposite of justice. It's the opposite of law and order. It's the
Yep,
opposite of peace.
right.
It's all about unrest,
Control.
division, control, and like war. Like
Right.
it's a war footing.
Fear.
That's what I was saying. Like that they approach on a war footing when they
Right.
come out to
They control
meet
with
you.
fear every time. He says, unfortunately, we are now being ruled by a government of psychopaths, scoundrels, spies, thugs, thieves, gangsters, ruffians, rapists, extortionists, bounty hunters, battle ready warriors, and cold blooded killers who communicate using a language of force and oppression.
Mm-hmm.
The facts speak for themselves. Again, this guy, if he's not an anarchist yet, he keep on going, buddy. You're almost there.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he's on the train. He may
right.
he may have punched his ticket for minarchism, but
Right.
he may decide to just stay on the train.
Right.
the rest of the ride.
It takes a couple more miles. Damn,
Right.
we'll get
So,
there.
so I'm down with this dude, whoever he is.
Yeah. So he says we're being ravaged by a government of ruffians, rapists, and killers. It's not just the police shootings of unarmed citizens that are worrisome. It's the SWAT team raids gone wrong that are leaving innocent citizens wounded, children terrorized, and family pets killed. It's the roadside strip searches, in some cases, cavity searches of men and women alike, carried out in full view of the public in pursuit of drugs that are never found. It's the potentially lethal and unwarranted use of so-called non-lethal weapons such as tasers on children for mouthing off to a police officer for trying to run from the principal's office for at the age of 12 getting into a fight with another girl. We're being held at gunpoint by a government of soldiers, a standing army, while Americans are being made to jump through an increasing number of hoops in order to exercise their Second Amendment right to own a gun. The government is arming its own civilian employees to the hilt with guns, ammunition, military-style equipment, authorizing them to make arrests and training them in military tactics.
That part where he said your Second Amendment right to own a gun or whatever, or to bear arms or whatever. Anyway, that's the part that says that he's probably a minarchist, because I don't have a constitutional right to shit.
Right.
I have a God-given natural right to defend myself, and I will do it however the fuck I see fit. Shout out to my my new PPS that I bought yesterday, and my hollow point ammunition that I bought yesterday. It's that I get it. Like you can appeal to. I'll say this: he's appealing to a broad audience. He may still be an anarchist. He's appealing to an audience that includes minarchists and maybe even some minarchist leaning conservative or even even non-conservatives. But when I hear the Second Amendment, their Second Amendment rights and everything, I'm like, look, I get it. We all got fucking that shit drilled into our heads in school. But that ain't where your rights come from. Yeah. If you think that shit gave you your rights, you're fucking out of your mind. All that did was say, hey, we have these fucking rights, and this says in your own document that you can't fucking take that shit from us. You can't.
And they said, we'll do it anyway.
Yeah, right. And that's why my thing was like, if the Constitution can't protect itself, how can it protect you? And I'm not saying that in like the physical protection, but seriously, like this thing was written to like form this government, and then the government was just like,
Nah.
Thanks, Daddy. I'm gonna kill you now. You know,
Right.
the government's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
thanks for
Well,
making me. Now I'm gonna kill you.
People miss. Do you know who the first president to do an unconstitutional act was?
George Washington.
Yep.
I mean,
Look it up.
I don't even have to like look it up to just
Right.
guess. Like, I'm pretty sure the first president.
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
the first president?
Didn't get through. Didn't get through. He was only in there for 2 terms.
So it's funny. It's funny because like, yeah. So you got like Asimov, and I mean, you have all these different dystopian visions of like technology and AI and robots and all this kind of stuff. iRobot. Shout out to Isaac Asimov. That was some and Caves of Steel. Some prophetic sort of stuff. But if you go back, you don't have to really be that prophetic. You just have to look at like man's creation. Man's creation is going to do what man's creation does, and what does it do? It fucks man over eventually. Like, so you could be like, hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna write this constitution, and this constitution is gonna form this government, and that government is iRobot. It's just like, hey, you know what? I found a way to kill you.
Yep.
And I'm gonna start doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
So he continues. He says, among the agencies being supplied, listen to this list, being supplied with night vision equipment, body armor, hollow point bullets, shotguns, drones, assault rifles, and LP gas cannons are the Smithsonian, the U.S. Mint, the Health and Human Services, the IRS, the FDA, Small Business Association, Social Security Administration, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Now this is some new shit to me because all that other stuff.
I've known about it for a while.
Yeah. But I didn't know that. I didn't know they were giving that shit to the Smithsonian and the U.S. Mint.
Well, the reason, and we're only halfway through this list, just to say, but the reason is because if they have ammo, you don't.
Right.
You're buying that shit up.
So let me ask you this: is the National Endowment of the Arts on this list?
Hold on. Let me just get
go ahead through the list.
So, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Education Department, which knew about, the Energy Department, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, okay, and an assortment of public universities. No, they are not. The Endowment of the Arts did not get it. They didn't buy it with their $300 million that they got when they gave us all a $1,200 check.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, it makes sense that they would be on there. I'm surprised. I'm surprised they didn't get their little piece of the bag.
Right? They didn't get their hollow points, motherfuckers. What happened?
And how are you going to protect art? How are you going to tell us? How are you going to tell us what art is and what art isn't without hollow points?
Right, I know. So there are now reportedly more bureaucratic, non-military government civilians armed with high-tech, deadly weapons than the United States Marines. That doesn't even begin to touch on the government's arsenal, the transformation of the local police into extensions of the military, and the speed with which the nation could be locked down under martial law depending on circumstances. Clearly, the government is preparing for war, and a civil war at that. And we, the people, are the perceived enemy. We're being taken advantage of by a government of scoundrels, idiots, and cowards. American satirist H.L. Mencken calculated that, quote, Congress consists of 1/3, more or less, scoundrels, 2/3, more or less, idiots, and 3/3, more or less, poltroons. I don't know what a poltroon is, but I'm guessing it is not a pleasant group of people. By and large, Americans seem to agree. When you've got government representatives who spend a large chunk of their work hours fundraising, being feted by lobbyists, shuffling through a lucrative revolving door between public service, and lobbying, and making themselves available to anyone with enough money to secure access to a congressional office, you're in the clutches of a corrupt oligarchy. Mind you, these same elected officials rarely read the legislation they are enacting, nor do they seem capable of enacting much legislation that actually helps rather than hinders the plight of the American citizens. So, absolutely, this is what governments do. They grow.
Mm-hmm.
The thing
Yeah, it
is,
was the same George Washington who said, government's like a fire. You
yeah,
think you can control it, but like it's like the motherfucker gave us napalm, and then it's like, yeah, good luck.
yeah, right. Yeah, and the thing
You
is,
can't even see the fire. It's just like it just burns everywhere.
right, and this is kind of my, and I know that I've talked about this myself, I think to you, but Larkin Rose is right. The worst, excuse me, the worst example of statism is minarchists. Sorry for the minarchists out there. I'm with you, Chad, that if we can get there, I'm much more satisfied than where we're at. But they have the dumbest arguments, because their argument always breaks down to
Yeah.
we need government to protect us from people with guns who will throw us in rape cages and will steal from us. That we need them to protect us from this, which that's exactly what government is. So it does not make any sense.
Yeah. So, not to throw a big wet blanket on the whole thing, but I mean, you're familiar with Rex 84?
No.
Oh, get ready. This is gonna be fun. So
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna use Wikipedia. I know it's got flaws. Wikipedia is Wikipedia, but I just don't want to try to like come up with my own summary. So I'll just read this. So, Rex 84, short for Readiness Exercise 1984, is a classified scenario and drill developed by the U.S. federal government to detain large numbers of U.S. citizens deemed to be national security threats. In the event that the president declared a national emergency, what do we have? We have a national emergency with COVID-19. Okay, he's already handed off the handling of all this stuff to FEMA and Mike Pence. So we're already in this. This shit is already ready to go. Like the FEMA camps scenario is like the launch sequence has begun. It's just a matter of whether we're able to turn it off before it gets there or if it continues down that direction. So the plan was first revealed in detail in a major daily newspaper by reporter Alfonso Chardi in the July 5th, 1987 edition of the Miami Herald. Possible reasons for such a roundup were reported to be widespread opposition to U.S. military invasion abroad, such as the U.S. If we were to directly invade Central America, to combat what the government perceived as subversive activities. Remember our quotes from Murray Rothbard.
Yeah.
The plan also authorized the military to direct ordered movements of civilian populations at state and regional levels, according to Professor Dana Reynolds. So, another thing that's happened is I've seen some stuff where they've talked about possibly starting to channel people away from rural areas into like more towards the cities, more towards suburban or smaller cities. But basically, wherever you can go to get off the grid, be self-sustained, grow your own food, have your own life where you don't need them, and you not that you need them, you know what I'm saying, where you don't need to that interconnectedness
Right.
that the state feeds off of, because it's kind of their lifeblood. Their lifeblood is this connectedness that we have to each other, where if they can control those connections, so what do they have control over? The internet, your cell phone, your TV, radio, all those media connections. They have control over the power grid. They have control over the water supply. They have control over the stuff that they're doing with the environment. They have control over oil and gas. All of these things. So unless you're able to go to some place where You can create your own little Wakanda or whatever, your own little world
Yeah.
of independent, the Amish, shout out to the Amish, for all the things you may have against the Amish. Um, I don't know. Maybe the Amish have it right. They have their own little community where they're like, stay the fuck out of here. We don't
Right.
want you over here. We're just, we're doing our own thing, and we don't want all that technology over here because that shit is gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that's what it ends up doing. And so there are benefits to we're using Skype to do this call and everything, and that's all great, but it's hard not to put your head on the pillow at night and start thinking about, how much you're kind of. So what we do in Louisiana, we eat a lot of crawfish, and the way that you catch crawfish is you put like a chicken wing or a chicken neck or something like that in a cage, and then they have these little holes. You do the same thing with crabs and stuff like that. So it's a big cage made out of like basically chicken wire, and the cage goes in. And on the insides, so it's got these little openings, and they fan out like this. So the crawfish can crawl in, and then it falls into the cage. But then the way that it's fanned out, it can't get back around to get out of the cage again.
Right.
So it's hard to not feel like, in some ways, with my phone and with the internet and all this stuff, that you're not like falling for the bait. And that's why I think like so much of this stuff, we have less to worry about with like the microchips or Real ID or all this other stuff. There's much less of a threat of people coming and kicking your door down to jam this stuff into you than there is of people just making it really, really easy and popular.
Yeah, I agree.
And attached to some stuff that you won't want to live without.
Right, like Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. Right. It's all those things are perfect examples. What they did was they found this way to like connect you with people you hadn't seen in a long time, share family pictures and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, all the while, they're collecting all your data from your family pictures for facial recognition. They're collecting all your habits and all your other data for the ability to sell you shit. They sell like Adam says, when the service is free, the product is you.
That's correct.
And
the thing is, Felicia, which is what for the other people.
You're NSA.
Yeah, my NSA, he's a bored motherfucker. I'll tell you what, especially since Adam's campaign, because watch my feed. It doesn't matter if it's Twitter or Facebook, none of that. I go in like once or twice a day and I post some shit and I get the fuck off and I put it down. I don't play in their games. Sure, I put pictures of my family, and they got that shit anyway.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't talk to motherfuckers on Facebook or Twitter. I don't care. This past weekend when we had our drum circle, oh no, I threw my stuff in the house. We're out being crazy.
Yeah.
And I do that intentionally.
So if you think about it too, think about this whole COVID-19 the lockdown, the stay at home, alone together, the new normal, all the bullshit Orwellian fucking terms that they throw out there. What did that do? It prevented people from being able to gather in person together.
Yeah, for sure.
And just share some camaraderie without all the social media stuff. Yeah. And it's not to say that they can't still record your conversations, and filter through all that stuff. But it's a lot harder to gather that information. The fidelity is not as high when you have this cacophony of voices at a party or something like that, and back music in the background, and all this other kind of shuffling and stuff. I mean, you know how it is. You try to do a voice text. Try to do a voice text and the air conditioner's on in your car or something like that, and it's like it'll spit out some gibberish or something, So they need help. And so what is a great help? Lock everybody down for 3 months and make them just text and email and Facebook message and Facebook post each other to death.
Get mad or fuck.
Yeah. Right. Get them mad, get them like talking about shit and everything, and then you can see like all right, who's the ones who are like really really scared about this and like really like
Mhm.
they're listening to everything we say. Okay, cool. Those are our sheep.
Right.
And then over here you have these like crazy people who are like, not down with all this stuff. Like, what do we have
Right.
to do to convince them? And also, how can we collect more data on them so that we know how to like twist their knobs to get them? Like you said before, like when they try to find out what you fight against, they gather data on
Sure.
how to attack you better.
Yep.
Um, and so it's so I guess if you're is the article still going or is it
Yeah, we got it. We got a bit. I told you it's good.
so
But what's funny is,
I was getting ready to segue into how we move forward with the
it's
podcast.
okay. We got a second. I'll
All
let
right,
you know. We
so
got because
all right, so we won't
because
segue just yet because I think
right,
there's a way to
I'll
segue.
use what you're doing because that's exactly what you're talking about. It's what he's about to talk about. He
Okay,
said we're being locked up by a government of greedy jailers. We have become a carceral state, incarcerated state, a carceral state,
right. Yeah,
spending 3 times more on our prisons than our schools and imprisoning close to a quarter of the world's prisoners. That doesn't include the people that they've got out but are imprisoned like this.
right,
So despite the
right.
fact that crime
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
at an
The house
all-time
arrest, the house arrest alone
right.
probably kicks that up to. Although I don't know, when the whole rest of the world was on house arrest too, it probably evened things out a little bit, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah, he said, despite the fact that the crime is at an all-time low and that the U.S. makes up only 5% of the world's population, the rise of over-criminalization and profit-driven private prisons provides even greater incentives for locking up American citizens for such nonviolent crimes as having an overgrown lawn. As the Boston Review points out, quote, America's contemporary system of policing, courts, and imprisonment and parole makes money through asset forfeiture, lucrative public contracts from private service providers, and by directly extracting revenue and unpaid labor from populations of color and the poor. In states and municipalities throughout the country, the criminal justice system defrays costs by forcing prisoners and their families to pay for punishment. It also allows private service providers to charge outrageous fees for everyday needs such as telephone calls. As a result, people facing even minor criminal charges can easily find themselves trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle of debt, criminalization, and incarceration. We're being so that's
Yeah, no, that's definitely you're kept constantly on the razor's edge
yeah,
between like going bankrupt, belly up, losing everything you have,
right,
losing your home, so that you're constantly like in fear of like, what if this goes wrong? So like little quick personal story. Lost my wallet. Um, Yesterday went and did some stuff. Got my gun. I knew I had my gun. I didn't have my wallet when I bought the gun because I had the cash to pay
right,
for it in there. And I made one other stop on the way home, and I could have sworn I like dropped my wallet in the parking lot. That's where it must have been, or I left it, on the counter when I was checking out, whatever. Well, it turns out it was in my daughter's car. We had gone. My son had he was riding my old bike. Shout out to this bike. This bike is a badass. I've had this bike 20 years. 20 years, and he's still riding it today. Original tires, original tubes, and everything. The only thing is the pedal came loose, and like the little nut that holds the pedal in place fell out. So we went riding around in her car, and I was in the passenger seat looking for that nut on the ground. Couldn't find it. But anyway, my wallet, I don't usually ride in her car, so I was in the passenger seat and I put my wallet between my legs on the seat, and it fell and it went under the seat. Um, well, I I tore my house apart looking for it, tore my wife's car apart, tore my car apart. I was looking everywhere. I looked in my daughter's car a little bit, but I didn't dig under the seats. I didn't tear it apart completely like apparently I should have. 4 hours later, find my wallet. Point is, in that moment, where that 4 hour moment where I couldn't find my wallet, I was legitimately nervous about like, okay, somebody's got my license, they got all these credit cards, they've got all this stuff. They can basically just like, and at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to cancel everything because then I have to like, I'm trying to like leave to go out of town to go to work. I have to cancel my work credit card. I can't buy gas. I can't, like now I can't buy anything. I've got to go, drum up cash to be able to just make this trip, and then I got to get reimbursed for it later or whatever from the company I work for. So I was not looking for it, and I was checking my accounts to see no charges had been made or anything like that. But I'm like, man, are they just like building their little, like they're just setting up accounts and stuff, and they're like setting shit up, and they're like, and I'm gonna get hit with like a $40,000 just like bomb where it's gonna just be like, okay, you don't even have this money, and now you have to pay it to us. So now you're our slave for however long. I didn't know what was gonna happen. And so for a moment there, I felt a little bit of what like it would feel like if I lost everything, because it felt like it was like a threat of like a severe loss. But man, there are people who they're literally like, if they don't get paid Friday, they're out of their apartment, out of their house, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there are a whole bunch of people who are somewhere between that, or they already don't have anything, and they're it's really bad. All the way to, and I'd say it's probably like 60 or 70% of people in America who are at that. Give me maybe 2-3 months, and it's over.
Yeah.
So I better, and when you unemploy all these people with this lockdown and everything, and shutting down all these businesses, you create this pressure cooker where naturally people are going to take to the streets, and emotions are going to start driving decisions, and then you have these agent provocateurs entered into the mix.
Dynamite in it.
That they're sitting there, and if the flame is starting to die out, they're throwing gas on it.
Yep.
And so it's just it's the perfect recipe for that, and it's all created by this. I remember it was funny. I was talking to some folks in 08, 09 when that whole crisis was going on. People in the paper industry, operators, these are guys in their like 50s, 60s, getting close to retirement. And I was talking about how I was like, really what we need people to stop buying so much shit on credit. And like people need to save money.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but then, and basically it was like we've created this economy of debt.
Based on debt. Yep.
And when you create a whole economy based on debt, like people lose their jobs when people stop buying stuff on credit.
Yeah.
How fucked up is that? Like that you basically have to like perpetuate a horrible idea to keep people employed.
Yeah, Keynesian economics is the worst damn idea anybody ever thought about having. Keynes, Maynard Keynes said it was awful. This isn't anything new.
Mm-hmm.
So to return to the article, and just so you know, it's 17 pages long, and we are on page 12, and that's in Word.
Okay, well, go ahead. I will stop talking and let you just finish.
No. This is part of it. But we're being spied on by a government of peeping toms. The government, aided by its corporate allies, is watching everything you do, reading everything you write, listening to everything you say, and monitoring everything you spend. Omnipresent surveillance is paving the way for government programs that profile citizens, document their behavior, and attempt to predict what they might do in the future. Whether it's what they might buy, what politician they might support, or what kinds of crimes they might commit. The impact of this far-reaching surveillance, according to Psychology Today, is, quote, reduced trust, increased conformity, and even diminished civic participation. Many of the things that we just talked about.
The what crimes they might commit thing is, I don't know if you saw Captain America Winter Soldier.
I did.
Operation Insight.
Yep.
Where it's just like,
yeah. Yeah.
All the potential criminals are killed, and so there's no more crime.
Right. Pre-crime. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're a Minority Report. Exactly.
Yeah. As technology analyst Jillian C. York concludes, quote, mass surveillance without due process, whether undertaken by the government of Bahrain, Russia, the U.S., or anywhere in between, threatens to stifle and smother that dissent, leaving in its wake a populace cowed by fear. We're being forced to surrender our freedoms and those of our children to a government of extortionists, money launderers, and professional pirates. The American people have been repeatedly sold a bill of goods about how the government needs more money, more expensive powers, and more secrecy, secret courts, secret budgets, secret military campaigns, secret surveillance in order to keep us safe.
I was going to say, how they need more money? They got all the money. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
What the fuck you need more money? Like all we're getting is you're pissing on us and telling us it's raining, and that's our money.
Right. Yeah. Here's your little bit. Take your scraps, Benji. You get just a little. All of this is under the guise of fighting its wars on terror, drugs, domestic extremism, pandemics, and civil unrest. The government has spent billions in taxpayer dollars on endless wars that have sown the seeds of blowback, surveillance programs that have subjected all Americans to a surveillance society, and militarized police that have turned communities into war zones.
Yep.
We're being robbed blind by a government of thieves. Americans no longer have any real protection against government agents empowered to seize private property at will. For instance, police agencies, under the guise of asset forfeiture laws, are taking property based on little more than a suspicion of criminal activity. So all of that, and we're getting there, but all of that we have seen ramped up in the last few years. What people, I think, of a younger generation than you and I, even like Adam and the people that are in their 30s, because both of us are in our 40s.
Yeah. And Hotep he's I think he's like 39 or something, around the same age as Adam. So it's a different, it's moving into a different generation. It's like my younger brothers kind of, because my younger brothers are both around that same, 35 to 40 range,
Yeah, even those people don't remember like you and I do. You remember the 80s where you could pretty much do whatever the hell you wanted to as a kid?
Yep.
That's gone.
Ride your bike everywhere. I mean, so one thing, where we moved now, it's a small neighborhood, and it's pretty closed into, like, there's not a whole lot of through traffic. There's some through traffic, but my kids are, we're on a lake, and so they like go out in a kayak and they like go, out on the lake,
right?
And they're kind of, it's really cool to see, because there's been a level of the neighborhood where we used to live. There was a lot of through traffic on our street, but they had some kids that they really got along with, and it was sad, because the things that they're going to miss out on now with those kids not being as big a part of their lives anymore is tough. But the freedom that they have now to just be boys,
right,
is a lot greater. And it reminds me kind of when I moved to the country when I was a kid. We moved for a couple of years to the country, and I was like dove hunting in my backyard, and I was catching snakes and killing snakes too. Killed a copperhead, and a couple of them actually, and I caught one too. Didn't know it was a baby copperhead. Thing
Right.
could have killed me if it could have like punctured my skin. But anyway, but yeah, I remember like living in the city, living right by like major roads that were big pipelines
Right.
for the city. Um, and like my parents never even like batting an eye about us just going riding our bikes wherever we could go
Yeah.
or running around. I'd go play. I played basketball at the park. Like I didn't. I was a pretty good athlete growing up, but I didn't play organized basketball except for like a couple of years. And then I started playing at this playground, and I got to a point where like people were asking me like, "Hey, where'd you play high school ball?" And I'm like, "I didn't play high school ball. Like I didn't even. I was terrible, but
Right.
I cut my teeth out here on this pavement.
Sure.
But I would go play. I would walk, dribbling my basketball for like 15 minutes to get to the little park. There were a couple of different parks. One of them was a lot closer. It was like 7 or 8 minutes away from my house. But anyway, I'd walk there and I'd play until dark, till you couldn't see the ball anymore.
Right.
We'd
Yep.
play, and then we'd walk home in the dark, you
Yeah.
know, and it was
Same thing.
nothing. It was nothing, And now, like, my wife is like looking out the windows, like, where are they? Are they? Oh, okay, I see them. I see them. You know. And now that we're where we are, it's a little bit different. We feel a little bit better about it. I mean, it's still not in like the most awesome. We live like there's like a strip mall a couple of blocks
Yeah.
over and stuff like that, so it's not great. But like the area where the lake is and stuff, they can go out on the water, and the lake is the only danger. I'm not worried about pedophiles
Worried
and
about drowning.
kidnappers and shit like that. Yeah, I'm worried about like real shit, like drowning and like snakes and shit like that. So, but that's a different level of fear, right? That's the stuff that you can teach your kids. Like,
Learn
okay,
how to
here's the
swim.
thing: watch out for snakes, and if you encounter one, here's how you respond to it. And the snake's not gonna have a van pull up with three thugs, get out and throw you in the back of the van, and then the next thing you know, you're on team Epstein. You
Yeah.
know,
Right. Yeah.
it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
Uh, and a
So
life jacket, you can keep
right,
yourself safe.
you can get your stuff. But what they've done is they've kept us in a state of panic about our kids. And I
Mhm.
think that dovetails into what he's about to get into. He says we're being forced to live in a perpetual state of emergency. From
Yeah,
9/11 through COVID-19 lockdowns, and now the threat of martial law in the face of growing civil unrest, we have witnessed the rise of an emergency state that justifies all manner of government tyranny and power grabs in the so called name of national security.
they tried really hard with climate change too,
Oh, yeah, but they
and so many
failed.
people didn't give a fuck
Yeah.
that it didn't
Well,
it,
because
it
it's
fell
too,
flat because
right,
it's
it's too
exactly
cerebral.
it's too ethereal, and it was too like far off, and also like they did a fucking horrible job of like it's so funny because it's like, oh, you must hate science. It's like,
Yeah.
no, but apparently you fucking do, because like
Yeah.
the scientists who are even doing this shit are shitty at the science that they're doing.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
are you even paying attention to this crap?
Right. Yeah. It was too easy to see through the
It's
bullshit.
similar to the way that the corona shit happened. Now, kill a dude
Yeah.
and then have Antifa come in, and like it doesn't even like it's so funny to me. It's funny, and it's really sad. The same people, and I've said this so many times, I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but the same people who thought they were cute, sending out Epstein didn't kill himself memes, never mentioning or never like recognizing the possibility that maybe Jeffrey Epstein's not even dead,
Right.
and that
For
they
sure.
just like whisked him away to his little private island. Okay,
For sure.
those people thought they were so cute doing 6 months of Epstein didn't kill himself, taglines on interviews or memes or whatever, like, oh, what's this? This is so funny. Like, yeah, okay, you think that shit's funny. And because you think, fake news, fake news, fake news. Now what are you doing? Fucking gobbling the cock of the news
Right.
every time they
Taking
unzip
it
their
full.
pants. They unzip their pants, and you're just like, give it to me. But
Yeah.
Anthony Fauci or Trump or this Birx bitch or whoever the fuck it is, they gobble it up every time they unzip their pants. And I'm like, who the fuck are you people? Like, it used to be, fake news and Epstein didn't kill himself. And that was all. You thought you were funny and cute. And now you're just like, whatever the government says, whatever CNN or Fox News tells me, by God, I'm
Chad, you got your mask on? You got your mask on?
Right, exactly. Are you standing 6 feet apart from each other? And like, masks are bad, the masks are good, the 6 feet apart matters, it doesn't matter, it's 2 hours, it's 15 minutes, it's,
Let's government trust them. They changed it 30 times, but you'd be all right.
So back to our old boy Star Wars. I have screenshots of this shit because I know he's gonna probably delete it. But he actually said, so it's funny, like this is what they do. So if you're an agent, you do this sort of thing. First thing you say is don't listen to dumbasses like Trump who say stupid bullshit. Instead, listen to Dr. Fauci. And I'm like, aha, you played yourself. because I agree, don't listen to Trump because he doesn't know what the fuck. But by God, don't listen to the dude who's connected to Bill Gates and all these. You go back to all the people he's connected to and the money that he's connected to. It's sickening. But yeah, it's you've got people conditioned to think they're like awake while they're asleep. It's Inception. It's the dream sequence. Now, the thing that people always do this thing where they think Inception is about the dreams, like a dream within a dream within a dream. Right. That's not what Inception is. Inception is planting an idea in your head and making you think it's your own, making you think you came up with it.
For sure.
And that's the part that they are nailing.
Yeah, I agree.
They're putting that idea in people's heads, and they think they're thinking for themselves.
Through propaganda. I think the conservatives are probably the worst at it. Like some liberals smoke some weed and go hang out once in a while, and they can get through some of that. But the fucking conservatives,
they're afraid of weed. Myself included. Like for a while, I was one of those people. I was and I still look to this day. I still have never toked, not once. One day, you're
gonna be at my house, and we're gonna get the hook out. And
look, man. If I could have been at your house 2-3 months ago, where I knew that there was no way I was going anywhere where I was going to get drug tested for work, I'd have totally done it because I would have been able to I would have been able to just like be pretty well guaranteed that because the way that my job is, I could lose my job if I if I pop on a test,
I understand. I work for a school system. Yeah. I generally only get to smoke weed for 3 months. So,
see, I work for something like that, except it's year round. Yeah. There's no this last 3 months was my 3-month window. Yeah. And I missed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Back to this guy's article, which is about to end, but I really think is, and I knew that it was going to guide us through this whole.
No, it's been perfect. This is great.
So whatever else it may be, a danger, a menace, a threat, the U.S. government is certainly not looking out for our best interest, nor is it in any way a friend to freedom. When the government views itself as a superior to the citizenry, when it no longer operates for the benefit of the people, when the people are no longer able to peacefully reform their government, when government officials cease to act like public servants, when elected officials no longer represent the will of the people, when the government routinely violates the rights of the people and perpetuates more violence against the citizenry than the criminal class, when government spending is unaccountable and unaccounted for, when the judiciary acts as courts of order rather than justice, and when the government is no longer bound by the laws of the Constitution, then you no longer have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, I would say those things have never existed because it's always.
Right.
But he says,
So either that's why either he's a minarchist or he's appealing to a broader audience.
Right.
Which and I can get with if you want to appeal to a broader audience, because this is something I can actually send this article to people.
Yeah.
And
It'll be
if
listed down below.
what's interesting about this though is the way I see this is, so you have on the one hand, this whole situation is designed to make white people, especially conservatives. So you have on the one hand you have white people who are leftists,
Yeah.
who want to and it was funny. There was this
virtue signal.
It's really sad, but it was really funny too. There's this video of these two white guys in their apartment, and there's a march going on outside their window, and people throw bricks through their window. They're like, "We're on your side. We're on your side." It's like, yeah, man, they don't fucking care. You're white. Right. Fuck you. It's and they can't tell. If you're not down there marching with them, you're just part of the problem. Anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. But anyway,
it is.
But what is
they fucked up in here out too.
So what's funny about it is that on the right, the white right, so to speak, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to see and fear the thuggery of black people,
right,
through this largely white vandalism and violence, yeah. Which is weird, right?
Right.
So you send that stuff there, and then you get your conservative white people who are look at those thugs and look at all this stuff, all the they'll associate all that stuff with gang violence, yeah. Essentially. And then on the other hand, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to pit that against black people who are supposed to see the infiltrators as white supremacists.
Yeah.
So now you have white supremacy versus this you have these two fears that you're playing, because the last thing that we can have is black and white people together recognizing they're both getting fucked over by the state.
Correct.
On a routine basis.
Yep.
Because if you keep everyone fighting against each other and not recognizing each other's humanity, right, you can keep people from attacking the inhumane that is really inhumane. Because the reality is, as bad as white supremacists are, okay, comparatively speaking, the threat is much worse the more power you give to the government to try to fight white supremacists.
Correct.
Because what the government's going to do is, number one, it's going to accentuate white supremacy. And number two, it's going to do very little to stop white supremacy. And number three, even when it's not white supremacy and it's not trying to stop white supremacy, it's fucking you over anyway.
Right. And using white supremacy as an excuse.
As an excuse, right. And then on the other hand, for all the white people, the gang violence that you're worried about, the people selling drugs, the drug dealers, that you're worried about.
My kids.
All this shit. Yeah. Okay, the same shit was going on during Prohibition. Maybe if the shit wasn't illegal, maybe there wouldn't be the emphasis on finding women and children to traffic it and sell it because you try to avoid the authorities.
Just go to the store.
You just go to the store and buy some. And
right,
there's no criminal network needed to avoid being a criminal.
Right.
Right? So for all the fear that you might have of all that shit and everything, you're under much greater threat from the state.
Yeah, for
than
sure.
You are from your fellow humans, your fellow Americans, who are just trying to get by, who are just trying to overcome. And how much more likely would it be for there to be all these little side hustle, underground economy type endeavors if it wasn't so damn near illegal to be black and be prosperous?
For sure.
Do everything they can. Unless you're being a statist,
right?
you're not really allowed to be black and be successful.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah,
I include entertainers in the statist because entertainment provides another vehicle for the state to promote its propaganda
circus.
or to promote its caricatures of people,
Right.
because you end up with like and there's a lot of really awakening sort of lyrics and messages in rap music and all that sort of stuff. But I think if you talk to most,
Tupac.
yeah, if you talk to most families in the black community, they really wish that there would be another way to promote the ideas that are needed to get people into a place of power. And I say power not in terms of government power to exert over other people,
Right.
but power in your own
Empowerment.
self, empowerment, right? Because people think power is evil. Well, no, like the corruption of power and the abuse of power by evil, corrupt people is evil, but power itself is a good thing, because without power, you are powerless.
Yeah.
Powerlessness is not a good thing.
Yeah. What power needs is a balance with love. And
Right.
what they're trying to avoid with all of this stuff is any kind of coming together in a loving environment. They don't want, black people and white people and brown people and yellow people and red people to come together and go, we're just people and those assholes are screwing us over. So they don't want that. So to return to the article, what we have is a government of wolves. Our backs are against the proverbial wall. The government and its cohorts have conspired to ensure that the only real recourse the American people have to express their displeasure with the government is through voting, which is no real recourse at all. The penalties for civil disobedience, whistleblowing, and rebellion are severe. If you refuse to pay taxes for government programs you believe to be immoral or illegal, you will go to jail.
Right.
If you attempt to overthrow the government or any agency thereof because you believe it has overstepped its reach, you will go to jail. If you attempt to blow the whistle on government misconduct, there's a pretty good chance you would go to jail. I have a caveat. Unless you can get over to Russia and hang out with Snowden, then you might be all right for a minute.
Even then, though, you're not. Are you really okay if you have to flee to Russia to avoid being thrown in jail for blowing the whistle on criminals?
How sad is it that Snowden ran to Russia from the United States for freedom? So for too long, the American people have obeyed the government's dictates, no matter how extreme. We have paid its taxes, penalties, and fines, no matter how outrageous. We have tolerated its indignities, insults, and abuses, no matter how egregious. We have turned a blind eye to its indiscretions and incompetence, no matter how imprudent. We have held our silence in the face of its lawlessness, licentiousness, and corruption, no matter how illicit. We have suffered. How long will we continue to suffer depends on how much we're willing to give up for the sake of freedom. America's founders provided us with a very specific explanation about the purpose of government and a roadmap for what to do when the government abuses its authority, ignores our objections, and establishes itself as a tyrant. We must choose between peaceful slavery, in other words, maintaining the status quo, in servitude to the police state, and dangerous freedom. He's paraphrasing Jefferson. What that will mean, carving out a path in which we begin to take ownership of our government, starting at a local level, challenging the status quo, and raising hell nonviolently whenever a government official steps out of line. We can no longer maintain the illusion of freedom. That's the end of the article.
Word.
Yeah.
That was bringing the heat, man. That's
right.
Oh man, it's a lot to digest there. And well, So, and it started off, it was talking about it being a distraction and everything. And so it's funny, my wife just sent me this little, she's like, did you know about this? Because there's a lot, like, she's much more into like our nutrition and
Hmm.
the, medical, or not medical, but like, homeopathic, non medical
Right.
treatments. 'Cause medical kind of implies medicine, right?
Hmm.
And that's, if you think about it, the whole medical industry is about medicine, pharmaceuticals, like that
Yeah.
sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and surgery,
Yeah.
the shit they make money off of, like
Sure.
giving you nutrition advice on how to not need them is not really part of their game. Anyway,
Yeah. An example.
you can find some that are that are willing to go that route, but they're like unicorns.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, as an example of how nutrition can help, I've got pretty bad arthritis. It's rough. Well, right now, I take a handful of pills every night. You know what they are? Turmeric, frankincense, cherry. I take herbs,
my
and
man.
yeah, and that's the stuff that allows me to not cripple around with a cane all the
Right. Yeah,
time.
get rid of the inflammation and everything. Yeah. So anyway, so she sends me. So as for the distractions, and I was like, yeah, I knew about this stuff. So, like, so you have uh, Hillary was supposed to testify today. I think they're still kind of they're dragging some of that. So I haven't. I was driving and I was looking for my wallet, and then I was driving for 3 hours. Um, so I don't really know like what actually happened. I know she was supposed to testify today. Um, then there's like subpoenas for like some other Obama officials and stuff like that.
Right under the garbage.
Right. So, but so like my MO when this sort of stuff happens is I go to like start digging into, all right, what kind of legislation are they trying to pass right now? You know, what's going on behind the scenes while everybody's focusing on all this shit. What House bill just passed and is on its way to the Senate, all that kind of stuff. Or what reconciliation did they make with like Senate, approval or whatever. Anyway, that sort of
We
stuff.
got a raise this week.
Right. So you've got all these testimonies and all this like Obamagate stuff and everything, and there's so regardless of where you fall on the Trump versus anti-Trump or anything like that, you have to recognize that there was some criminal activity that was going on in the previous administration too,
For sure.
and the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that. We can just create an infinite feedback loop to go
Right.
back to all the previous images of presidents. Um, but anyway, it's always interesting to me that these big, massive sorts of events that just don't seem congruent with what. Not to say that what happened is not a tragedy. It's awful. It's a tragedy what happened to George Floyd.
Yeah.
But the response is completely incongruent.
Yeah.
And I also realize that like you can have like a ratcheting up of like discontentment, and that there's a straw that breaks the camel's back. But when you see all these other things, all this other evidence of other people having a hand in what's going on the streets and off the streets and everywhere else, um, I look to what kind of fuckery is the state pulling,
Yep.
and there's for all the people who, I've got a lot of family and friends who are big Donald Trump supporters. Um, you know, where's your wall that you prayed for, and where's your Hillary Clinton in shackles that you prayed for? I don't want a wall.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind Hillary locked up. That would be pretty cool.
One among many.
I'm not a big fan of walls. Just like I wasn't. Somebody asked me way back when, and this is like a more of a left leaning person. This is back in February or early March or something like that, talking about the Corona shit. Like, now look, what do you think about this? Lockdown, the U.S. No international travel. or something like that. And I was like, and no immigration, whatever, blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm not a real big fan of like restricting the free movement of people. Now I get the premise that certain people, because there's an element of like the Hotep Nation that sees like, okay, look, we have this system, and currently the system that we have is bring in cheap labor, pay them cash, and don't employ black people. So from that standpoint, yes, fuck yeah, build the wall, stop that shit from happening because it's fucking over our community. I get that, and that's part of what got Maj kind of run out of the potential for prominence that he had in the party. I get that. I completely get that. I understand that, and I don't necessarily disagree in the context that if we're going to have a fucked up, oppressive, retarded system, at least have that fucked up, oppressive, retarded system protect Americans. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to have some stupid bullshit, at least have the stupid bullshit not fuck over people who live here.
Right.
At the or have it support people who don't live here to send money back over there.
Right.
At the expense of people who live here. However, in an ideal world, what I want to see at the end of the day is a world where we can all go wherever the fuck we want to go, and there's no passports, and there's no like borders, and there's no the only borders that are legitimate are the borders around property that is private, that is owned by a person, an individual, or if a group of people want to say, look, we're going to have this, and this is our thing, and we've all agreed to have this, and like if you want to come and join, that's cool, but this is going to be but to have borders drawn arbitrarily by politicians through war, through conquest, or through the motions of bankers and all these elitists all over the world.
Yep.
And to restrict the movement of me and you and other people like us from going wherever we need to go to find economic opportunity. No, fuck that shit. Like, in a certain sense, big shout out to the Mexicans who come over the border illegally, who say fuck you to your borders, fuck you to your taxes, and work on a cash economy. Because if the rest of us did that shit, it'd be a whole different world. But instead, we're afraid, and so we continue to play the game that the system puts in front of us.
The thing is, I think that world is coming anyway.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of whether we do it in a way that we want to see it happen peacefully, or if it comes through some sort of massacre of epic proportions, which, I don't know how that exactly plays out, but you study enough history and you see how those sorts of things sort themselves out, and it's usually not pretty.
Yeah, and usually they are heralded by economic collapse, and we're almost there. So.
No, absolutely.
So we didn't get too much into the future. I want to briefly cover it and say that I'm open to about whatever, but what I'm thinking is I like this format. I like having an article or two that we go through. In this particular case, it was a little bit of a longer article. It was actually more of a statement, but a longer article that kind of guides us on a topic that's relevant for now. And I like that format. But more what I'm thinking about for the future is, like, I'd like to get an official podcast eventually, not just be on Facebook, do Patreon or something like that. I'd like to work on, like, how do we grow? Where do we go? How do we market what Aquarian Anarchy is? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, well, so not that I don't appreciate what this episode was, because I think a big part of what has to happen for like human consciousness and for like waking people up to the point where they actually do the things necessary to move us towards freedom more rapidly and more completely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this sort of problem identification, as I'll call it, episode is valuable. It's not useless.
Yeah.
You know? However, it stops short to me because what it's missing,
Solutions.
what's the solution? Where do we go from here? What can we be doing on an individual level, on a community level, on a network level? And that's one of the things that's one of the things that's really brought me to enjoy being a part of the growth of Hotep Nation, is that there are a lot of different skill sets involved in that community. You have like people who are really good with technology. You have people who are really good at like marketing and business. You have, people who they're really good at stock market shit. And you have all these different elements that give you a pathway to freeing yourself along the way to freeing everyone else.
I like it.
So it's not just about, hey, we're fucked. This is fucked up. How do we vote harder, or how do we not vote and say fuck you and tell more people to say fuck you? Like all that stuff's good,
Yeah.
But ultimately, if you don't have a tool or a set of tools to help you to build your house, hearing over and over again how much it sucks to not have a house is not enough.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Teach me how to build a house, and I would like to start to go more in that direction of having and that's why I was kind of transitioning there back,
an hour ago.
Yeah. But and maybe it was premature because I know and I love the article was great. I'm glad we finished it. But yeah, like to get us more in that, because there's so many different facets of this. There's your mindset, there's your health, there's your connecting with other people and networking and finding people who know things that you don't know or who do things that you don't do. But then there's also like finding ways to accentuate what you do best and make that a contribution to something bigger than yourself.
For sure.
Starting with making it something that contributes to your own well-being, but then also making it something that is valuable to other people, because that's where, if you really think about it, that's where like real economy comes from. Economy comes from, you've got something that you offer, I've got something that I offer. I don't need as much of what I offer as I can produce. You don't need as much as you produce.
Right.
But I need what you have, and you need what I have, and we can find a way to make that worthwhile to each other and trade. And then the more people you have like that, the more you make it to where, okay, I might not need video production services like I can do, but somebody might need some gardening advice or something like that. I mean, I could use some right now because there's some stuff I've done in the past, but I haven't done everything. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can learn, and the sort of thing that you learn when you're part of any kind of community, that there are all these different people who have all these different talents.
I like it.
You mix that stuff together in a way that is, that's kind of, it's symbiotic in a natural way, in an enforced way, and building that sort of skill building. My vision is I want to see a world where people are building skills that are valuable to themselves and to other people, and then they are leveraging those skills into making themselves more prosperous and making people around them more prosperous, because that's how all this shit that we live in is really possible. And what's really upsetting is that this albatross of parasites is what makes us not achieving our full potential.
Absolutely.
And so what if we can do more to, even while we have the parasite on us, to be more productive and to be more creative,
yeah,
then we can afford the parasite a little bit more, you know,
yeah,
and we also strengthen ourselves to be able to fight off the parasite. It's like we're building our own immune system.
yeah.
That's my vision.
That's good. I like that, and I like the gear, the pivot towards, okay, we've dealt with some problems. How about we deal with some solutions?
Right.
I like that, and I think that we could really start offering that, and maybe we try. Nothing is. I've learned that nothing you plan out is ever going to work.
Right.
So
Mike Tyson said, everybody got a plan until you get punched in the nose.
right. So what I think is that when there is news, like, let's be clear, that this particular issue is just leveling the United States right now, and it needs to be covered, and it is a problem, and all of that. But follow that up with the solutions. Try to do, like, okay, we have news, this has happened, and maybe that even happens like one this week, the next week, but then you say, oh, well, here's what we're doing, here's what I'm trying to do with my life, this is things that I can offer to you, this is, and you do, those kinds of things. I like that. And sure, sometimes it's going to fall down to where this episode is, oh God, shit sucks, and and then this episode is kumbaya, everybody loves everybody, and we're gonna go out and bang on some drums. That's gonna, we're gonna have those kinds of episodes. But I like the idea of trying and consciously trying to move towards solutions, because I think that's one of the things that I think I do want to avoid is trying to be like, I like solutions, but I don't want to be Tom Woods. I don't want to be, the I know everything about what you need to do for free.
No, right. No, definitely not. No, actually what I was thinking is like do more like research on that sort of stuff, and maybe an article that we read through is something on how to grow a garden that can sustain your family, on I don't know, 40 square feet.
Yeah, I like it.
You know what I mean? Like some shit like that, because it's or what's the best way to get yourself to where you can have a whole home generator, or like there's all sorts of different things.
Right.
We could even do an episode on like some of the best guns, and we can. I mean, I can. I don't. Maybe having guests would be a difficult thing to try to achieve, but we could definitely have like some articles that we can find that can be guest articles. From that standpoint.
Well, one of the things that I think that would be cool to do eventually is you have to pay for a subscription for Zoom. And
I have a paid subscription for Zoom.
Do you?
Yeah, so if we wanted to do that,
okay,
we could do interviews.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean, I have it now. So if we wanted to do that, whenever, and
how much does it cost? Just curious.
It's like $16 a month, $15 a month, something like that. Yeah. So it's I've only paid it twice. I've had it for 2 months. I just got charged yesterday, actually, for my second month. So if we wanted to do a guest, we could do one for the next 3 weeks, and then I could cancel it until we have another guest. No, but for real, like it's not the worst thing in the world to think of. That you could kind of like go a few weeks, not have a guest, and then like just be like, all right, I'm gonna pay for a month, and then we can have 2 guests this month, and
That's good.
then I can cancel it, and we can go back to doing. We're exposing ourselves for being cheap people on this podcast, but hey,
We
look,
are people.
we don't have revenue coming in, so if you want to change that, I can have my Coinbits app. In the you can go to Teespring to Marcus's site for that. I mean, no shit. There's some badass shirts and some other stuff that you can get. The banner that he has behind him. I don't have my banner with me, but my Hotep Nation banner is at home. It's gorgeous and giant, and you can, if you watch Hotep's Been Told You, Uncle Hotep and Hotep Jesus both have theirs behind them. So anyway, it's anything you can do to support the podcast will make it to where we can do more of these things. I want to get a microphone. I want to get some other stuff. There's some of that stuff I'm going to do on my own, but it wouldn't hurt to get a little love from the family for that stuff. But so seriously, the possibility of having someone come on and talk through some of this stuff, because I don't want to be. And if you think about Tom Woods, like, a lot of his stuff is guest based. He brings people on to because it's something he doesn't know about. And I'm not saying like we have all the solutions. What I'm saying is, let's seek the solutions, because it's really easy. And this is one of the things that the left and the right both do, is they love to identify problems and to talk about problems ad nauseum. And then the solution is to vote.
Yeah, I agree.
And the solution is not to vote. The solution is actually to not vote. And instead to build yourself and to build the people around you, to build the people who you care about, who you love, who you know you can trust, and to make that trust network so strong that it can't be assaulted by any government.
Yeah, I like it. Man could not have closed it any better. That is awesome. So I think that's a good idea. And I like the guest idea. We have a pretty good, we could have Adam on, we could have G.I. Mary Jane on, we could have, we have a pretty firm. We could have Michael on and talk about computer freedom and stuff. So I think that's
if there were sports again, Michael and I are working on something for that. But so far, since we decided to do that, they canceled all sports. So I guess we shouldn't have tried that.
Wow.
But
cool. All right. Well, if you guys have liked this, like, share, subscribe, buy stuff. Love you. Stay free. All right. Stop our recording.